says, so Moses told the people of Israel what the Lord had said, but they refused to listen anymore. They had become too discouraged by the brutality of their slavery. And then the Lord said to Moses, go back to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and tell him to let the people of Israel leave his country. But Lord, Moses objected, my own people don't listen to me anymore. How can I expect Pharaoh to listen? I'm such a clumsy speaker. But the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, that's Moses' brother, and gave them orders for the Israelites and for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord commanded Moses and Aaron to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt. So I don't know about you. But to me, it feels like we are at a critical juncture of life on this planet. It seems as if the world is on fire, and so are our hearts, inflamed with fear, uncertainty, lacking faith, often filled with passionate but unwise intensity. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say our world suffers from a serious progressive disease. A look back at history anywhere at any time reveals a world subject to these convulsive spasms of madness, periods of what look like collective insanity, the rise of narrow-minded fundamentalism, and times when great misery and confusion infect the masses. These eruptions are the opposite of wisdom and balance, and they tend to be compounded by arrogant leaders who are devoted to self-glorification and the exploitation of others, leaders who instill fear to achieve dominance. Well, we find a leader like that in the biblical story of the Exodus. And I call it a story very intentionally because as I preach through the book of Exodus this season, I'm treating it more like a narrative. So as opposed to deconstructing the text or offering an historical analysis, I'm looking at the plot, the characters, the setting, the action, because I think what we read here resonates with our story today. The character of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, is cruel, vindictive, genocidal. Think about the role of a character like Pharaoh in the plot of a story. Characters move a storyline towards the story's final goal. And all good stories have a goal for their readers and listeners. The story goal is the final step, the resolution. The story goal is the focus of the entire cast of characters. Some of the characters for this resolution are there to make it happen, and some are not. And in the case of the first 13 chapters of Exodus, the clear goal is expressed in this constant plea to Pharaoh, let my people go. The resolution is liberation from tyranny. Well, in a good story, no villain is going to say, yeah, okay, see you later. Let's catch up in a few months and you can tell me all about how the move to the promised land is going. No, there must be some conflict. Protagonists working towards the goal and antagonists thwarting it. And they clash because of their individual motivations regarding the story goal. The protagonist pursues the story goal and considers the value of getting there, and the antagonist prevents the story goal and forces others to reconsider their actions. So the heroes and the villains have motivations, and those need to stay rock solid throughout the entire story. Well, in the past, many scholars read Exodus historically. They wanted to prove Moses was an actual person and that Pharaoh was an identifiable ruler, maybe like Ramses II. Let's not get caught up in that. It's clear that the story of Exodus, as we have it now, is a complicated compilation of anecdotes created, compiled, and edited by people with different story goals in mind. So I had a dialogue with John on yesterday to hash some of this out. So thanks to John for some of the latest research on the story of Exodus. As I understand our conversation, some of these stories come from pluralistic, multicultural Jewish exiles who migrated and resettled in Egypt through centuries of displacement from Israel. And in their writings, the story goal is to convince Judeans to head back to Israel and rebuild the Jewish temple, a sanctuary, a home for Yahweh. Other storytellers were poor Jewish migrants who returned to their homeland after living as prisoners and then assimilated citizens in Babylon and Persia for 4 generations. Their story goal was to promote monotheism at all costs. They insisted that the God of Israel was not just the chief God, but the only God who dwells among the people. And eventually, later editors took these story goals and wove them into one theme: liberation. Let my people go. Well, a story needs a hero. In the story, we call him Moses, and Moses needs an antagonist, and we know that character as Pharaoh. He has no other name. That's intentional. Pharaoh is not a specific historical person. Pharaoh is any cruel tyrant who gains satisfaction by inflicting suffering on others. Pharaohs live at all times, in all places, impeding peace and liberty. In our story today, Pharaoh is known as a god in human form, who is not accustomed to taking orders from, lesser gods, let alone an unknown deity like the God revealed personally to Moses by name, Yahweh. So Pharaoh inquires, who is this Yahweh? Why should I listen to that voice and let Israel go? I don't know a Yahweh, and I will not let your people go. And now the stage is set for a long struggle between a vengeful ruler with an oversized ego and a prophet with a new understanding of God's power. Well, the ancient editors of the story make a lot of hype about Moses, and their story goal comes to pass. It works. The character of Moses becomes known as the greatest prophet in Jewish history. The story of Exodus, it becomes legendary. Monotheism takes hold. Priests will build a new temple in Jerusalem and use the story of struggle and liberation to form a new national rhythm to life in Israel. The story will give the people religious pilgrim festivals and rituals, and those festivals will bring money to the temple. And the temple treasury supports the priests, and in time will raise enough money to pay off future cruel and vindictive emperors from conquering. We can see a similar type of storytelling and reframing in our American history. In the difficult period of the Revolutionary War, for instance, there's a lot of trauma and turmoil. Should people fight for freedom and risk losing everything? Or should they remain dominated by European colonial powers? One man, George Washington, emerges as a superhero, the one who people can trust, who will take them to this new territory of independence. If you look at the biographies of George Washington written before, say, 1855, you might think George Washington was a demigod. The mythology about him is incredible. Well, in some ways, we have similar material about Moses. The character of Moses is the product of periods of trauma and turmoil. Moses, the abandoned baby sent downriver on an ark of papyrus. Moses, who grows up navigating his birth culture as a Hebrew and his adopted culture as an Egyptian. Moses, who sees the abuse of the Hebrews and murders an Egyptian soldier. Moses, who flees to the desert and hides in fear. Moses, who stammers in public. Moses, who goes to his adopted grandfather, who's a genocidal maniac, and asks for the liberation of Yahweh's people. This Moses has to face his own trauma, overcome his limiting beliefs, face his fears, and lead people. I mean, should he ignore that voice calling him to lead the liberation front? Should he settle for life in the deserts of Midian? Should he go to the courts of Pharaoh and face rejection or prison? Is he up for it? Is he strong enough? Is he smart enough? Is he fit enough? Is he eloquent enough? Is he enough? All the hype about this hero is a way of expressing that Israel could trust Moses' judgment. And if you can trust Moses, then by extension, you can trust this lineage of priests who lead in the name of Moses and his brother Aaron. Listeners of the story could trust that there would be success in a highly risky venture of leaving a place like Egypt or Persia, where they at least had the necessities, and then migrating to a place where they might not survive. And so these ancient storytellers and listeners were convinced, it was worth the risk if it meant they could determine the course of their own lives and escape the cruelty of imperial control. Okay, so that's a lot of background. So what? Who cares? Well, for me, living in the pandemic is kind of a phase of facing Pharaoh. The past year and a half has been a struggle for me. I need to be honest with you. COVID-19 has stirred up my own traumas and fears, sickness, death, worry, grief, abandonment. I am not prepared for a time like this, and I don't know the way out of it. I'm scared for my health. I'm angry. At times I'm paranoid, and honestly, I feel like I'm not enough, and I'm exhausted. So yeah, I can relate to this Moses character who wants to run and hide. Just let someone else be the prophet for a while. My pathway through the pandemic turns me to be a leader of the liberation. And I'm not just talking about being a leader in the community or a leader in our congregation. I'm learning to lead myself. I'm discovering that there's a lot of pain and fear and shame in my life, and I'm really skilled at hiding it all, avoiding it. I'm finding the resources to establish a sense of self with a wise heart who's calm, compassionate, creative, curious, confident, courageous. I'm slowly seeking the strength and resilience to face the Pharaoh in my own life. And it's terrifying. That work takes my breath away. Sometimes it leaves me sobbing. But I'm learning to take a stand for my own emotional and spiritual liberation. And it's one stumbling step and stammering syllable at a time. I'm stepping up to be the hero of my own story with a story goal on the horizon: peace, happiness, liberation. I wonder if you have a Pharaoh or two that you're facing right now. Could be your own trauma, facing your fears, naming your insecurities. It could be a family member, a memory, a dread of the future. Maybe you bear the burden of cultural and historical trauma, the sin of slavery and bondage, mistreatment, microaggressions, macroaggressions, denial of a people, the emotional anguish and physical health risks that come along with such a heavy weight. I wonder if there is a Pharaoh you need to encounter, and the very thought of it runs a shiver down your spine. I wonder if you ever feel like running away because you are not up to the task. I wonder if you ever deny the pain and say, I don't know, it's not that bad. It will be okay. I don't know what everyone's making such a big deal about. That this is going to blow over and go away. Just give it time. And anyway, I'm a clumsy speaker, and nobody would believe me anyway. I wonder if you ever feel like you are not enough. I wonder if you want to be the hero in your own story of liberation. I wonder if we can listen to the divine center in ourselves, listen without making excuses, listen without creating a spreadsheet of pros and cons, listen to the righteous rage, resentment, betrayal, and horror caused by the pharaohs in our lives and in our world. And I wonder, can we bring some open-hearted courage to those places and demand our freedom? In our own stories, the pharaohs in our lives, the antagonists, they have a purpose. They challenge us. They get in our way. They put obstacles in our path. They want us to reconsider where we are going and why we are going there. Sometimes they scare us. Sometimes they hurt us. But we have a source of courage and strength and resilience. Tell those painful, cruel, vindictive pharaohs in your life something. Tell them the Lord sends you. Tell them the Lord sends me to find the unfolding pathways to a promised land. Tell them the Lord sends me to draw boundaries around when it's time to stop working and begin to engage in time for self and family. Tell them the Lord sends me, and my dreams and my perceptions cannot be denied. Tell them the Lord sends me to celebrate my people, my heritage, and our rights to exist. Tell these pharaohs the Lord sends me, and my identity is rooted in love. Tell those pharaohs in your life, yeah, I'm flawed. I have moments of weakness. I have regrets. I make mistakes and miss the mark. And I am enough. Let my people go. Let me go. Tell those pharaohs, tell them the Lord sends me, and I'm safe, and I am supported, and I am loved, and I am enough. I invite us to a few moments of silence, of reflection,